Hello. So I wanted to come on here and talk about the spiritual significance of the number five. Five, five, five. So as we get into five, we begin to move back into the elusive, move back into, we've gotten our survivals needs covered. We've gotten our needs for survival covered. When you speak to the number five, you start to speak to, okay, if I'm no longer just thinking about survival, what am I thinking about? What do I desire? What do I want for my life? Five is independent. Five is like if you're in a family of, um, if you're in a family of five, then five might be the middle child, right? So if you've got two parents and three kids, like just thinking about a typical typical family, five might be the middle child where they're forgotten enough to where there's quite some freedom to explore. Thinking about five in numerology, it's very much so known as the adventurer, the person who's not super committal. It's kind of connected to Sagittarius. It's the one that wants to go off exploring. But in the tarot, the five is the Hierophant. And the five is also the devil paired with the number one. So one and five. Could also be considered temperance if you put one and four together. That was the part that I was like, I don't know how I want to do this. But five is like one of those energies where it can go great, and it probably will go great, and it will also probably absolutely have its fallouts, right? It will probably be super successful, and it will also probably create, there's going to be something that you forget about with five that follows you either now or later. There's something about it that it creates this idea, this energy where it's like, it's unreachable. So five speaks to the future in the sense that what you do now, what you do in this moment, maybe perhaps impulsively or just in the rush of things or just as you're beginning to live your own life, because I mean, what else are you going to do? As what you do now will create some type of thing in the far off future that you'll have to answer to in this lifetime or the next. Thinking about religious institutions being established with the number five. We've got a system of government. We've got a way of designing our communities and leading our people. But there's something wrong with the number four because it was a little too rigid. Now we need a church, Now we need a mosque. Now we need something that is also about regulation, that is also about guiding people, but more so in the spiritual sense. Now, five is the one that's like, let's create an ancestry DNA test, Let's get people connected with their past, Five is the one that's digging into these things, but maybe not in a fully fleshed out way. Maybe not in a completely ethical way. Five is experimental, but kind of just for the rush of things, kind of just for the sake of things. This energy is necessary. It's a part of growth. You simply have to be this. You have to embody the energy of five. There's nothing actually wrong with it, but it does speak to the existence of, just of charging full steam ahead and the problems that can create when you're not focused on all of the fallouts of things. These are the people who, make massive changes and leaps and bounds forward for humanity. And then there's the fallout, right? Like the creation of social media, for example. Incredible for information, incredible for connection. But then there's all the insecurities, there's the bullying, there's the propaganda, there's all these different things that come out as a fallout. There's too much screen time, All the tech people really understand the energy of five in the sense that you need to experiment. You just need to create these things and put them out there, even if you don't know how everything's going to go, even if you know that things might go really, really badly in some sense for lots of people. Ultimately, it's for the better. Ultimately, it's for the betterment of people. We needed to create spiritual institutions. We needed an institution dedicated to the spirit, which is what religion really originally kind of was. But it's also about government, and it's also about rules and restrictions, and it's also about persuasion. 5 is where we start to see persuasion, follow me here. 1, it's a natural leader, you just simply follow it. And 4 is kind of like the leader because it has to hold the structure together. 5 is like, come over here and do this. And it's not necessarily questioning the main leader in charge. It wants to be a leader in its own specific sector, in its own specific world. It's doing its own thing. It's something to entertain you. It's something to keep you occupied while you're in this world, and because you don't have any struggles anymore, like your basic needs are covered. You've got fire, food, you've got water, you've got shelter. Well, do you want to do this little thing? Like 5 is where you could easily get a pyramid scheme. Where 5 is an energy where you can create pyramid schemes in this energy. You can create incredible businesses in this energy. You can be a great persuasive speaker, a great writer in this energy. You know how to get a great salesperson. Though I feel like I see 5 more though as the boss. It's the boss energy. 5 is also where you can really feel like in the gutter in terms of I do not have enough, because you're looking around and you're like, wow. Because after 4, we start to see the establishment of like class structures, right? 4 being wealthy, like kingdom wealth. 3 being like aristocratic, middle classy. 1 just, being the base of existence, your basic needs, and 0 being nothing, which could mean a lot of things. But 5 is where you start to be like, okay, so first of all, with 5, you're already somewhere in these class structures. You're already somewhere along the success line of what's good and what's making a great life and what's like shit and what's not enough. 5 is like, I don't feel like I have enough. 5 is looking around, it's looking at other people's stuff. It's like, I don't like this. And it would like to do something about that. 5 is like, I want to write my own story. I've seen people with their ideas. I saw number 3, getting people organized and looking at these things, and they offered their ideas. Great. I saw 4 applying those ideas and creating structures. Okay, cool. But what about me? 5 begins to turn inward again. So 4 was going outward. It's about service to a larger, greater good, about creating a larger structure. The same way 2 was about we get together. Now what can we create together? Going outward. 5 is similar to 3 and 1, where it's about the self. 5, you go inward again. So you go inward and then you get a spiritual institution, because you're talking about the spirit, you're talking about what's within. Who am I? Not my body, not what is my body made up of, but who is my spirit made up of? The thing I can't see. You can't see inside of yourself. I bet somebody with a strong 5 energy created like x-rays and created things that, like those things that go down into your throat and like you can see, like I bet 5 energies created those things that peer in, because it's really self-indulged. It's very self-observant of what you have and what you don't have, what you've lost and what you want to gain back. 5 is where vengeance can come in. 5 is where an entitlement can come in. With 5, you can look at your ancestry, and if your people have never had anything, then you can feel really bogged down by that. You can feel very defined by your ancestors with 5, but you can also feel very proud and very much so like this is how things should be. If you come from an ancestry of like incredible wealth, it's just like, I deserve this. This is a part of me. Like I bet it was someone with the 5 energy that was like, kings and queens are of a divine birthright. Like they're literally just different, and they were probably like the energy that was like, you need to have children with people who are also of this divine inheritance of this royal birth, or else you're literally gonna fuck up your bloodline. Like it's probably 5. It might have been 5 that did that, because it's just so observant of the self and what you have and the importance of what you have and what you're made of, not just physically but spiritually and like historically. And if you had something was wrong, so there was a wrongdoing in your family, like 5 speaks to karma. 5 really speaks to karma. I think I said that 2 speaks to karma a lot. 5 speaks to karma a lot, which is why at 25, it's like that first quarter life crisis, and you're starting to take a look at your life But 5 speaks to karma. But especially in terms of what you feel you are owed, what has been lost. If in your distant past, your family had this house, but then a neighbor burned this house down. At some point, like, there's some type of vengeance. In the 5s, you begin to see past life karma, past life trauma really affecting that present generation. 5 really feels the weight of all the numbers before in everything that they did. 5 can be very emotional. 5 can be very empathic, very all-consuming. 5 is a great number in the sense that it's deeply empathic. It truly feels everything. Everything, it's absorbing and feeling everything outside of itself and picking up on all the things. And then it's taking that in, and it's looking at what it has, and it's like, what is going on? And it's really contemplative about, like, what is justified, what is right, what is owed, is this enough? I don't think this is enough. And really wallowing and feeling upset and conjuring emotions and conjuring reactions and feeling a need to be heard and to resonate on a deep, deep spiritual level with this idea of deserving grace and deserving peace and deserving salvation. And all of these things come in with the number 5, which is why there's also, you can have a strong spiritual legacy, but also a strong push for independence, because it's almost like you're searching for something outside of yourself, which is where that traveler energy comes from with the number 5. But you're also searching for something truly beyond this world. And for a type of recognition that is beyond probably what anyone on earth can provide you with. So very deeply spiritual, the number 5 is. It can get a bad rep, but really 5 is like all of us. 5 is the part of all of us that maybe there's also a lot of shame around. 5 can be the black sheep in the sense that people can look at it and be like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're so ungrateful, or you're so non-committal, you're so, you wallow too much, you do that, you complain too much. But 5 is just super honest about what it's recognizing about its reality, and it's reacting to that. And if it doesn't like something, if it doesn't feel like something is good enough, or if it feels like it's at a loss, or if it feels like it's been wronged, it acts on that. It can be impulsive. Revenge can definitely be part of the 5 trait, but it also helps us to appreciate the fact that we are allowed to experience emotions. We don't just have to get over things. 5 really deeply evolves the mental health institutions, the understandings of mental health, the understandings of spiritual health. 5 is like, wait, it actually is that deep. For everybody that's like, it's not that deep, 5 is the one that comes in and is like, actually, it is that deep. It is that serious. It is that important for me. While you feel this way, well, I feel this way, and I am an individual. I am different from you in the same way that 3 understands the differences. 5 really understands the differences, and 5 speaks out against society. 5 is like, I am not, I get that you guys are feeling this way, and but even though I'm a part of this society, I am my own individual. And I've got problems with the society, because even though it's working for us in general, it's not working for my specific needs. 5 is the one that gets us diversity, like diversity programs. 5 is the one that starts to get us to understand equity. 5 is the one that gets us out of this mentality of pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, and gets out of the 5 advances theories. So we have the theory of equality. Now we have the theory of equity. 5 really gets into those intersections in the same way. 5 learns from the spirit of 3 a lot. 5 really learns from the spirit of 3 a lot, and just expands upon that and goes deeper into self, goes deeper into the individual. What are the individual needs? 5 speaks directly to each person, rather than, just to these collectives, to these groups. It's not just about the community, it's now about the individual, even the individual within these communities. So yeah, with the devil, 5 can get this reputation of being super self-focused, self-indulged, but we need to understand this aspect of the self. 5 isn't ashamed of the shadow and of the ego, even though it is made to be. It is not, it's like, this is a part of me, and I'm feeling this part of myself. So why am I not allowed to? Or why am I being told to act like, or why am I being made to feel like I'm doing something wrong? I'm not doing something wrong, I have every right to feel this way. I don't want to be here. I don't want to like be pinned down to this relationship or this job connection when I want to go over there. If I want to go over there, why can't I? Like, yes, I have these things that I need to do for society. I need to do my part. But also, like, what if me going over there and creating this thing has this potential to create this? 5 is like, okay, yeah, but what if, you don't know what I could do. You don't know what I could create. You don't know the potential. 5 really believes in the ethereal, the elusive, the future. 5 really believes in the possibility and puts a lot of faith and trust into possibility. So much so that when it comes to justifying their actions for going against the grain, or even shirking responsibilities, it's like, well, I have something important to create. I have something important to do. And while you may not understand it, and while this may inconvenience you, and I am sorry, and I'm supposed to have this duty to community, I can't, because I've got a duty to a greater calling that while you can't get it right now, it does have effect. It does have a value. It's going to have its value. 5 can really feel like it has to fight to be recognized and understood as valuable, because it's just kind of seen as one amongst the many. It's just like 5 isn't that the energy of like the word some. It's so vague. And 5 is really trying to distinguish itself, but it might not be recognized as such because it also is the energy. It's the energy of creativity too. So just the way to say it, just the same way that 3 and 1 are creation energies, 5 is creation energy as well. It's an odd number. It's the oddball out. And with the number 5, you start to get career paths that are not just the basics, So now with 5, like the like creating your own industry, like the tech industry, like influencers, that's a 5 energy. Like spiritual institutions, that was like a creation of a different thing. And while spirituality is a fundamental, in terms of like the basics of survival, like it was food and water, and shelter. And then you started to get to contemplate, and then you're like, wait a minute, I need to talk about this spirit, these ancestors. And it didn't come far off. 5 isn't that far away from 0, but it did come after the basics. So 5 is the creation of like different career paths, different kinds of work that isn't just about your basic survival things, your basic systemic structures. 5 goes beyond that. 5 answers different needs. That's why 5 is also the industry of the number of entertainment as well, the entertainment industry, which we soon begin to recognize is a fundamental need. People need entertainment. People need spiritual institutions. We needed technology. We needed advancement, but it gets a lot of pushback. It's called selfish, it's called unproductive, it's called crazy, it's called wasting your time. 5 has to fight to be seen as worthy and deserving enough of being created and spending time away from of the basic needs, of doing your part with the basic needs, in order to create this thing. 5 has to fight to do that, and sometimes has to piss a lot of people off and shirk responsibility and create some bad karma. With 5, you might gather karmic debt, because you have to do a lot of things that go against what people need you to do, go against your responsibilities. But ultimately, you end up creating things that are so important that it balances things out, which is why 5 is the balance of 10. So 5 really does speak to that balance number. And when you think about temperance is also the number 5, just in a more of a magnetic, in a more expansive way, because it's 4 and 1 plus each other. So 5 is so necessary, but it's hard to see it at first, right? It's hard to see it at first. The same way that 5-year-olds, if you don't go to pre-K and all these things, once you're going to kindergarten for the first time, you can be like, why the am I here? And just thinking about like kindergarten teachers, they end up having to play a role that feels so childish sometimes, and how much energy they have to exert in the way they speak, and you really have to get into this role that is so far away from who you are at your age, at the point of what age you are when you're a teacher and, in that type of educational institution, but they play such a significant role. Like, we're learning every single day that it's really your early years of childhood education that affect everything else. It's pre-K, it's before those. So it speaks to that. 5 is a very influential number and impactful number whose legacy is oftentimes and importance is shown for generations beyond it. 5 really speaks into the long term. You really get into long-term effects with 5. Long-term legacy that is muddied and that is complicated. It's not a clear-cut legacy. It's not just all good. There's lots of critique. There's lots of judgment. But ultimately, the legacies that 5 creates ultimately will probably stand because people recognize that they're necessary. Even as much as there is hate for them, and people will obviously try to evolve them and build upon them and change them. There will be lots of confrontations with 5, but ultimately it will stand. Ultimately, it will still exist. Ultimately, it was necessary. And 5 will also almost always be proven justified in the end, despite the mistakes they made. And that's where we get this energy of like, there is a lesser evil. There is a point to doing something even. There are good lies. That's when we start to complicate our ideas around morality and ethics and all these things, because you start to do things that are unethical, like not staying at the family farm and going off into the city and starting this trades business where you're building these weird tools, but then you come back to the family farm and now you're creating a tool that helps your grandpa do this job, and all the farmers are complaining because they're like, you're trying to steal our job. But ultimately this ends up creating something that saves so many lives and saves so much time and feeds so many people that it's ultimately like it was justified, even though at first it seemed unethical. Like AI, it'll probably end up embodying, also connecting to the number 5, just like I think it's going to connect to the number 4. But 5. So that's just 5 in a glimpse. We talked a lot about 5. Very, very interesting number. I'm a life path number 5, so it's an interesting number, and I would love to know what you guys think about the number 5. What do you think of the spiritual significance of 5, the mathematical, just what are interesting things you like about 5? What role has 5 played in your life? Do you struggle with the karmic debt aspect of it, the judgment aspect of it, but the long-term good? Sometimes you don't see the results of your labor immediately with 5. Sometimes it's extended, and that can be very frustrating. 5 can be like the frustrated artist who never really gets their due in their lifetime. It's a lot of things, but ultimately it becomes justified. It becomes exalted in the future. Its legacy is cemented. That 5 is a part of history. 5 speaks to history, and these are historical figures. Whether they were appreciated during their time or not, they will be appreciated by the future. 5 understands the future in a way that not many other numbers do. For the better and for the worse. And it doesn't matter. 5 accepts the future and accepts that it can't control it all, but 5 is confident enough, egotistical enough, narcissistic enough to know that it deserves to have its creations be part of the future and shape the future, no matter what anyone else thinks. And so it does that. And we need that. 5 has guts. 5 has balls. 5 is not afraid to be an outsider and to be rebuked and to be the bad guy, because ultimately it's the good guy. But you would need long-term perspective, very long-term perspective, to know that sometimes. Sometimes 5 is like the perceived Judas, but not in the sense like that we're out here killing people and snitching on people, but like just in the sense that they're doing the thing that everybody's like, why are you doing this? 5 can also be kind of like Aquarius energy, just being the weird person, but it's deeper than that. Like sometimes you're usually doing something that really is annoying to people or troubling to people, really shakes up the foundations. It threatens to create a different foundation, threatens to create a new tradition, asks to be taken as seriously as these other things that have been serious for so many generations, asks to be given that same level of importance, and it's like, who do you think you are? But 5 knows who it is, and that's frustrating to people. Sagittarius. So anyways, yeah, there's a sense of authority that 5 speaks with. That it's just like, but where do you get this from? 5 is like, well, I just simply know, and that's because 5 is very ancestral at this point, very much so filled with the ancestors, so it does just know, and very much so of this world, and very much so of the future. It's a very interesting space that 5 takes up, but isn't always great at defending itself, isn't very great at tact, isn't very great at moving with grace all the time, but still is given the space to do what it needs to do, because you always need the town crazy, you always need the selfish person. Like, it's just, 5 is also very human, very reflective of humanity and in the diversity of the human experience, which is why 5 is great for diversity initiatives in general. Okay, so yes, okay. Especially like diversity initiatives that really are against the grain at the time, things that really, like, people are like, why do we need to focus on this? 5 helps with that, because it's just like, it helps get across ideas that are super weird, or super like considered not important. 5 can help be like, but they are important, and speak with such an authority that it's just like, okay, or just be so persuasive that it's like, fine, we're just going to let you be, even as people are frustrated, and then somehow it just creeps into existence without people even understanding how it happened. And even as frustrated as they are, they're happy with it, because ultimately it serves a need that no one really knew they needed, or didn't know how to make it happen, or didn't feel like they were able to make it happen, didn't feel like it was worthy enough. 5 sees the worth. 5 sees the worth despite the blocks, despite the problems. And 5 doesn't really consider the problems, which, like I said, can gather karmic debt because of that, because of what it puts on other people's backs, the strain that it puts on other people's backs. But 5 always manages to find a way to repay that through the long-term wealth, the long-term legacy that it leaves, that is ultimately supportive and good. So 5, the complicated number, long video for this one. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.